think our kids are as scared of us as we were of our parents?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't
no,
think so.
In no way will they ever be. And also, the other thing is, our kids are seeing their parents way more than we ever saw our parents.
Yeah.
And it's because of this post-COVID world, but I think it was a little bit before that too, just because we're just a little more involved.
Yeah, I'm a very involved parent, yeah. Charlie's been playing soccer. It took her a while to come out of her shell, but that last game, up and down the field, kicking the ball.
Nice.
So, we were talking before we started recording about Tim Burton, and then we started talking about Michael Keaton's, what do we call it? Second half?
Second act.
Second act. Yeah, he hits in Night Shift, Mr. Mom, Johnny Dangerously, some stuff I've never heard of. Gung Ho, Touch and Go, The Squeeze, She's Having a Baby.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff there. Gung Ho, I know, is a Ron Howard film about striking auto workers, I believe.
Really?
But I've never seen it. The other ones I don't know. I do like his Clean and Sober movie.
Which came out the same year as Beetlejuice. What's Clean and Sober? I've never heard of it.
He's a guy who's trying to get clean and sober.
Huh. Oh.
It's real dramatic.
The Dream Team.
Don't you love when the meaning of the film is in the title? That helps.
Does it? Is that a joke?
As long as it's a good title, I think it helps. But there is a rash, just to go off on another tangent, of movies nowadays that are called sentences. I'm thinking of ending things. And This Summer I Turned Pretty. That's weird. I feel like they're out of good titles now and they're not trying that hard.
See, I like those titles.
You like those titles?
Yeah.
Like, do you have an example of one that's actually good? Because those two aren't good. So if you like those, then I'm like, really?
I'd like those. It feels like all those movies star what's his butt from Dune.
Yes, I was just totally going to say that. Timothy Chalamet. Yeah, he's in every one of those.
So it might just be in his contract.
Call Me by My Name. Yeah, that's his movie too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Back to Michael Keaton. So we have Batman,
Yes.
89. Huge hit, big star, but Pacific Heights, One Good Cop are the two movies he does between Batman and Batman Returns.
I don't know what those
And
are.
I have no idea what those are. And then after Batman Returns, we have Much Ado About Nothing, My Life, The Paper.
I liked My Life.
Speechless.
It was a sad movie, but it was him and Nicole Kidman, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, where he's dying.
Then The Paper.
Yeah,
I've
great.
seen that
Another
cover.
great Ron Howard movie.
Yeah.
Really good movie. He's great in that.
Looks very familiar. Speechless. And then we hit Multiplicity.
Classic.
Inventing the Abbots.
We talked about Multiplicity and that I was like, when I was a kid watching Multiplicity, Andie MacDowell, she just seemed like a mom. But now when I watch it, God, she's so hot in that movie.
Isn't that messed up? Oh.
You don't see when you're a kid, you don't appreciate how attractive a lot of these actresses are because they're a little older, you know? Like you're attracted to all the ones that are like young and shit when you're young.
Oh my God.
but
So
you don't see it.
Age appropriate times, like when we're 70, are we going to be really into like the Golden Girls? Like, will we watch the Golden Girls and realize how hot they were?
Probably. I think that's going to happen.
I'm excited for getting older then. It will change my view of every great old show.
Man, that Estelle Getty. Ooh, give me B. Arthur anytime.
No. The biggest thing I remember from Multiplicity is pan and scan.
Yes, where they would shift digitally the picture. Yeah, I hated that. It looked bad.
Very heavy in that movie just because it had to be.
It was.
I think that's
because of all him playing four characters. Yeah,
it's very weird. So Inventing the Abbots. So
see, I don't remember him in that movie. When was he in Inventing the Abbots?
Yeah, I don't know because I look at that cover and that cover looks familiar. Liv Tyler, Joaquin Phoenix, Billy Crudup, Jennifer Connelly. Like that's
I know I watched it.
Yeah.
I just don't recall him in it.
So after Multiplicity, even after Batman Returns, all the way through, I mean, he's working this whole time.
You know, I think after Batman Returns, he got a little lost in the wilderness. And then it was Multiplicity. When that came out, everybody was like, oh yeah, Michael Keaton. God, he's so good. And then immediately he got lost again. I don't know why. It's like nobody appreciated what they had with him while they had him as a younger man.
Even though he's working the whole time. Then, I call this the downtime because Jackie Brown's in here. And I really liked when he popped up in those movies.
So it was Jackie Brown and Out of Sight. He played the same FBI agent.
Yep, the next year. And then Jack Frost. And I feel like Jack Frost is the moment where people were like, okay, yeah, he's done.
Right. And that's unfair, but that's how we were back then.
Body Shots, A Shot at Glory, Quicksand, First Daughter, White Noise. I didn't remember him being in White Noise.
I remember White Noise because a lot of those guys, like Keaton and Kevin Costner, for instance, they were doing these simple thriller films. Even Harrison Ford, when he did What Lies Beneath with Robert Zemeckis, remember?
Yeah.
They all all those guys that were now in their 40s, they had those kind of films. So White Noise was right up there with, and I think Costner had like the butterfly effect or something to that extent. And it wasn't that movie, I don't think, but it was another title. Anyway, but they were a little more prestige than just direct to DVD crap.
I'm sorry, I got lost to about halfway through what you were saying because I saw that he was in Herbie Fully Loaded.
Wow, see, I didn't even know that. Jesus Christ. Maybe he was the car, and that's okay.
And he's doing voice work in here. He's got a Japanese title or Japanese credit for Porco Rosso, but it says it's from 1992. Anyway, and then he's in Cars.
Oh yeah, Cars. Yep.
Chick Hicks, The Last Time, The Merry Gentleman, Postgrad, Toy Story 3.
I think Toy Story 3 more than Cars is when we again acknowledged. Oh yeah, Michael Keaton. He's so good. What happened to him?
I feel like 2010. So we're up to 2010 with all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then this is when we start seeing it because he's in the other guys the same time, and he's good in that. He's funny.
He's funny. He's super funny. Yeah.
I feel like he's the new Michael Keaton in there. And then he's got.
I think you're right.
There's something called Noah's Ark: The New Beginning, where he plays Noah, and there's no link to click on this, and I'm very. Oh, it's probably animated. He's in some movie called Blindsided, where I don't even know if this is American, which is fine, but I was looking at the poster, and it's... Then he's in RoboCop, and I didn't realize.
Yeah, the newer one, yeah.
Need
he was
for
the
Speed.
asshole exec.
Oh. And then he's in Birdman, his official return, which has not aged as well.
I don't think so. I never even cared for the movie, but I did appreciate that they were, like, realizing we have this American legend. He needs a lead film. It doesn't even matter what it is at this point. Just give him something with a little prestige, and it'll make us all realize what we've been missing for the past 20 years, by not caring about his career. So, yeah, it did what it should have done.
Yeah, Birdman did what it should have done. And then he continues his voice work with Minions. I think he is the Minions. And then he's in something called Spotlight, which I don't think I ever saw, but it's like stacked. Rachel McAdams, Liev Schreiber.
He did a couple
Stanley
HBO film type things, and I think that might have been one of them, but that might have been a film on its own. But he was like in a Baghdad movie, like about the Iraq War from the early 90s, and that was pretty good, I guess.
He did The Founder, which was big.
I liked it. Did you watch that?
No.
Yeah, he was fun in that.
Then Spider-Man, American Assassin, which I have not heard of. Dumbo. Was he good in Dumbo?
Yeah, everybody was good in Dumbo. It's just the movie was pointless.
He was in the Chicago 7 movie. He was in Morbius. He was in Batgirl. So, like, Knox Goes Away looks good. That's his newest. He's a hitman who has really, really severe Alzheimer's, and it's setting in. And he's trying to wrap up his business before he loses his mind.
Wow.
And
that's funny.
Yeah.
I can laugh at that. Why not?
Anyway, that's been the Michael Keaton hour. What are we doing here? What are we talking about?
Like in life? What are we doing?
I mean, yeah, that's a great point. Did you ever read the book?
No.
I kind of want to now.
I kind of want to, too.
Was there just one book? Because they based 2 on the book as well, didn't they?
Yeah. I believe he's written a couple about the family, but as far as the movies are concerned, they've only ever been based on the first one.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure about the third film, but I think that's mostly an original creation from Coppola.
What? Coppola? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it, guys. We're doing it. We're doing one of... Is there going to be anything new talked about with this movie today? I'm sure it won't be. We're just taking our turn. It's fine to cover a super famous, some would call cornerstone movie. Okay, it's that big.
We might have some sort of take on it that somebody has never heard before. It's possible.
I mean, we could try to make one.
I'm not trying. It's going to happen naturally if it happens at all.
Okay, all right. I will also not try. We're talking about The Godfather Part 2. a rare movie that could potentially be better than the original, and the rare movie where a sequel is considered one of the best movies of all time. The first movie to win the first sequel to win the best picture.
Also, one of the first sequels to be labeled Part 2, I read.
Really?
So now everybody does it. Everybody kind of does it since. Because Paramount didn't want to do that because they felt it slapped you in the face saying, you've seen this movie before, now here's more of the same. And they thought that would bring people, or would keep people away from seeing it. But they were luckily a little wrong about that. Although it didn't make as much money as the first one.
No. Movie that teamed Al Pacino and Robert De Niro for the first time, even though they were never together on set. Call it a team. Yeah. God, just a huge movie. Where I want to start with The Godfather Part 2, did this movie make you want to become a gangster? And did it make you think about how you could have a crime family?
No, not at all. The thing that I could never relate to with these movies is that they are heavily Italian American. And I'm just not Italian American. And I just really think if you're not Italian American, you cannot be a gangster. It's just the way it is. I was not born into the right kind of family.
See, I'm the opposite. This movie always makes me want to be a crime boss.
But how could you do it? How could your situation ever rise to what they were able to accomplish as Italian Americans? And now I say this because this has always been the criticism of these movies, is that they feel that they've unfairly stereotyped Italian Americans.
And you can say that it's an unfair image on the Italian Americans, but also Italy in the last, well, it was Sicily specifically, in the last 15 years had to ban Godfathers in church.
Did they?
They got rid of it.
Yeah, wow. But what I liked, there was a particular part with Tom Hagen, Robert Duvall's character, when he's talking to Frank, one of the guys that was going to betray the family or whatever, and he's talking to him in prison. And he says this. He says that you were one of the guys from Sicily, from the first families that decided this is how we should organize as a crime family. We should use terms like a general and a soldier, and that's where capo came from, and consigliere, and all those terms. I just never heard it put that way before, and I forgot about that part in the movie where they kind of explain it, where there was just these families in the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s, that, according to this world, maybe this is true, I don't know, they got together and were like, this is how we organize. This is how we become this family that will someday be called a mafia. And I thought that was kind of cool.
What I really liked about that part, and it ties into the recent TikTok thing about how often men think about the Roman Empire. Did you hear about that at all?
No, I don't.
One day Brooke just asked
Explain
me.
It.
She said, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And I was like, what? And I thought about it, and I was like, once a month at most?
That's quite extensive, I would say. I don't think I think about the Roman Empire hardly at all.
Well, apparently, this is a thing where on TikTok, girlfriends were asking their boyfriends, and their responses were like once a day, every day. And there was a ton of people saying they thought about bullshit. The Roman Empire every day.
Look, nobody on TikTok knows anything about history.
Oh, yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
They don't know shit. So if they don't know anything, they certainly don't know about the Roman Empire. These kids don't know anything about history.
But it's still that thought. The thing that resonates is the thing where you think about something every day and you think you're the only one that does.
I see.
Do you have a thing that you think about every day?
Probably General Grant.
What?
No, again, it's the Civil War. It's our age. We're white male Americans in our 40s. Yes, I think about the Civil War almost all the time. No. I don't know. I'd have to really think about it, but I don't know off the top of my head. What do you think about?
I have a thing that I know that I do every day. I think about having Wolverine's claws at least once a day, every day.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And it's weird.
I'm going to give this some thought. I don't want to just throw it out with me coming up with something off the top of my head. I'm sure there is something.
Apparently.
I'll get back to you.
I think that's the interesting part of that.
I'm going to wait till you're in the middle of something real. It's just going so well, and then I'm just going to throw something out and totally derail the conversation.
But
stay tuned.
Going back, how would we start a crime family? It worked for Vito Corleone, because of where they lived. and there was a lot of population right together.
Vito wasn't the first, right? De Niro's character, Vito, which is Brando's character from the original. So he's a young Vito. There was Fanucci, I think is the guy's name, who was like the Godfather that would walk through the streets.
And that terminology is hard. Like, he was a Don as well.
He was a Godfather. I think how it comes about is everyone's weak because they're living in this neighborhood and they're all just trying to get by. They're all immigrants. It's very poor. So he's a guy that threatens people, but also does favors. So if they have a problem, they come to him, and they also don't want to cross him. So little by little, you get popular, you get rich, you get powerful, you get people that want to be around you and your enforcers. That's how at least it popped up in Little Italy, the way Godfather 2 explains it. And then Vito kind of took over because he didn't want to be under this guy's rule. But how did that start in Sicily? Because they didn't really talk about that, because when Vito's a kid, Sissio, I think, is the Godfather there. It's already going. It doesn't really explain how that starts, but I assume it's a similar way. They live in a small neighborhood. There's a condensed population. So you have a guy that just slowly becomes powerful through intimidation and favors.
So let's talk about Godfather Part 1 just for a minute. Was the movie just about the dehumanization of Michael?
Well, we have Vito, Marlon Brando, and all of his makeup to look like this guy he just came up with. He talks like this all the time. He's from the old country. They live in, it's in New York, right? And they're just a powerful mob family, the Corleones. But Michael's a guy he's one of the sons who doesn't want anything to do with the business. He went to war because he felt very patriotic after Pearl Harbor was attacked. But he wants to be part of the family, but not in the business side. Then we have Sonny, who's the logical heir to the crime family. After Vito will pass it on to him. And that's James Caan's character, right? And then you have the loser son, Fredo, who nobody would ever give him anything to do because he's too much of a fuck up, is what we're learning.
Which is a really nice detail. Like, it reflects real life so well, where you have a family and you have kids and you raise all the kids the same, but they're going to end up wildly different just because they're different people. So we've got a hothead who doesn't think. We've got Michael, who's probably the closest to his dad, we think, initially.
But he doesn't want to see it, and he doesn't want to show it. You know, he wants to be a modern American, basically. Like, he doesn't want to be held to the standard of being from the old country and all that stuff. I think he really was like, he went to war, for God's sakes. He was in the trenches with other young male Americans.
Where he got his first taste for blood. No,
Maybe that was it. Maybe it dehumanized him in the war to begin with, but he didn't want to show it.
Yeah, he wanted to act the part.
See, what's funny is that he goes to war and Sonny's all against it because, you got to be part of the family's what's important. The country's not important, is kind of how Sonny takes it. But maybe that's what put him in the perfect position to take over the business someday.
And I like that Vito bought him like a deferment.
Yeah, because they have that kind of power. The main plot movement of the first movie is what I wanted to just mention quick. Like, the whole reason things go crazy
is because, and it ties into the second one so well, is the times are a-changing.
There's another family.
There's 5 families.
Basically, or a guy who's part of another family. They want Vito to put in money to get into narcotics. But Vito's an old-fashioned dude, and he's just like, no. I don't want to do this narcotics thing. He clearly thinks it's dirty, but he also thinks it'll interfere with his political contacts, which the other families kind of resent the fact that he has such good political contacts and doesn't share them. So that's a little bit of it too. But he says no to this guy about the narcotics. So what does this guy do with the family that's on his side? Well, they put a hit on Vito, and then they all go to war. So then Vito's laid up. Sonny has to kind of take over. But like you said, he's too much of a hothead to make good decisions. But Michael is kind of there on the periphery, and he loves his dad, so he's trying to save him at the same time. So he's kind of getting involved, even though he doesn't want to necessarily, but he feels the pull. I don't know. I think he even thinks that Sonny's kind of lost. He doesn't know what to do. So Michael can do things on the ground, at least. And that's why he kind of decides, they tried to kill dad again because the cops are bad. I want to kill them.
Yeah.
And I always liked how Vito just kind of died playing with his grandson. Like, he just had a heart attack. I thought that was nice that they kept Brando in as much as possible in the movie and then just kind of let him die a natural death.
Well, the movie takes place over what? It's many years.
It's about 10 years, I think.
I think that's...
It's like from 45 to 55. But I guess 1 and 2 altogether, I think it might be about 15 years.
I don't know how much time has passed in part 2.
Anyway, Vito's still alive, but he already gave the control of the family over to Sonny. So Sonny actually gets killed. He's betrayed by someone in the family, but you don't know who necessarily. It's just kind of a weird setup where Sonny gets gunned down. So then Vito kind of calls a truce, like that he won't come after anybody for the death of his son if we can just stop this whole war between the families.
And he agrees to use the drugs.
Yes, and he agrees to do that, yeah. Is this the point where Michael's just... Well, before that, after he kills the cops and the other guy, or kills the police chief and the other guy, he goes to Sicily because they can't touch him there, basically.
Yeah.
Like, he goes into hiding. He gets married. She gets getting killed. It was meant for him. So he realizes that he can get touched anywhere. He might as well go home. So all that happens. Vito dies. Sonny's dead. Michael's now in charge of the family, whether he wanted it or not. Is there a reason why he takes out the other families?
He's actively taking revenge for everything that happened.
And this shows the first sign of this is who Michael really is. He doesn't forget and he doesn't forgive. So this is Michael's strength, I guess, as the Godfather.
Yeah, movie starts in 45. Vito dies of a heart attack in 55. He takes complete control. He gets rid of everybody that would threaten him in any way. Like, it's such a huge moment in the movie where you're so happy it's happening. You're on his side.
I know. He's at his baptism and you're just like, damn, yeah. Like, that is ballsy. Like, no one had seen that in a movie, I think, at that point. That's what really drove home how great it was. The movie's perfect in my mind because it's casted. It may be the finest cast to ever be in a film, I think. It's just perfect in every way. Everybody plays
top to bottom
who they are, and it'll never be the same if anybody else did it. So that's number one. But number two, it's all about family, and I think that was Coppola's big push. It's fun to see that world that not a lot of people knew about, you know, this Italian-American mafia thing going on, and with all their phrases and terms, and that's why it works. But then the baptism scene where he exacts revenge, that really seals the deal as like, this is a classic American film.
Yeah.
And also Diane Keaton's in the movie, and to me, she's the weakest link of the whole movie. I do like her, but I just felt like she's kind of a non-character almost.
I feel it's like he marries her just for that old ideal of you're supposed to marry a girl and have kids, and that's what my dad did. And
like the woman he married in Sicily should have probably been his wife.
Yeah, like I feel like he loved her.
Just the quiet Sicilian who could have brought back.
Yeah.
And he really loved her, you're right. But Kay is just somebody he happened to know. They were starting something before all this started, so he might as well just get that back. Because his mind is on bigger things.
Yeah. It comments a little bit also about like rich kids. We know that Vito did these things because he was poor and he met a woman that he loved and he had kids, and he did all that before he was famous. And the kids are all kind of always trying to imitate him in their own way, but they don't have any of those core experiences that make them close.
They didn't have to work for it. You're totally right. Like he was in the shit.
Yeah.
Trying to find his way with nothing. But the kids just come into this world with all this privilege, and then they got to find a way to be who they are. And I think that is what gave Michael the edge, is that he gave it all up. He passed on the deferment, and he said, no, I'm going to do this thing that you don't want me to do. I'm going to go to war, and I'm going to fight. I think that gave him a little bit of an edge as a Nepo baby.
Yeah, he's a Nepo baby that earned it. So Michael's getting revenge, but also there's an active threat. After Vito's killed, the boss sets a meeting for him.
Oh, to be assassinated, right.
And he would be assassinated because Vito was dead and they don't give a shit about the kid. That's why he had to make... And Tessio betrays Michael.
Yes, Abe Vigoda's character, yeah. By setting up the meeting.
It was the original three, as we'll find out in the second movie. And we saw in the first was Vito, and then his two main guys, Tessio and Clemenza, who in the Godfather Part 2 in their younger roles. And then it would have made so much more sense if they had done it this way in this movie, knowing how it should have gone, that Clemenza, what was the betrayer's name? It
was all about Michael leaving for Vegas in Part 2, so he needed somebody to take over the New York crime family to run business. So it should have been Clemenza.
It was supposed to be Clemenza, but that guy didn't want to come back because he didn't like the character.
Something about like he wanted to write his own dialogue, and they wouldn't let him do that.
And then they turned him into they would have turned Clemenza into a rat, which would have been Frank's character, Frank Pantigliani, or whatever his name is, who ends up being that character. Yeah, and so they just make it so that Clemenza died of a heart attack, And Pentageli was also important, but he was like under Clemenza, and he took over the New York family.
So the movie ends, and I think Diane Keaton's biggest role in the movie is that she is the audience surrogate reacting as a normal American who doesn't understand this world. Through her eyes, you see who Michael used to be and what he is now.
And we fast forward how many years? 3. Only 3 years later.
In the first one, they send Fredo to take over the casino business, right, in Vegas?
No, they sent him there just to hide during the war because they didn't want him killed.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Because he's such a fuck up.
Because he's such a pussy. Yeah, okay. But they sent him there to take over the casinos, though, right? Or does that all happen in number 2?
It's starting there. This is the part that I really like. So Michael's always talking about making the Corleone family legitimate. And what he means by that is do business in places where the shit we do isn't illegal.
Yeah. Like Vegas and Cuba.
Yeah. Gambling, prostitutes. They wanted to set up shop in Cuba because the government would let them do their illegal shit there. It's just funny to me that, again, my view of him is so changed that he's not an honorable guy. He's a bad guy. And just doing what he thinks his dad would do all throughout this movie.
But he's doing things that are more modern, though. He is able to breach that, or to cross that bridge that Vito wasn't. He understands modern day casinos and prostitution and narcotics, stuff like that. So I think he understands that's how they have to make money.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't see a lot of comparisons between him and his father. I feel like Michael really does his own thing.
It's Michael's view that Michael is still operating from the worldview of just before the original Godfather. The way that he saw his dad and the way that his dad did stuff. He's constantly mad in this movie that the world isn't old and that things are moving forward. He's always disappointed by everybody up and down that they can't act like the way they used to and the honor was going away. So yeah, movie starts 3 years later. They live in Las Vegas. They are having the, first communion of Anthony, Michael's son? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're having a big party just like the first one, and they're talking business, and they're talking about how they're expanding their gambling operation, and they've got the senator who's kind of a dick and is pretty racist.
It does follow a little bit of the plot points of the first. Somebody wants something, but the person in charge won't give it to him, so now they have to go threaten him, much like a movie producer.
Yes.
And it's all about like a permit or something, right? Like for the casinos or something, yeah.
And then there's a hit on Michael that night, very night, in his home, where his children sleep.
Where my children stay, in my home. See, he's in partnership with a guy named Hyman Roth, who's this Jewish mafia leader in Florida.
Old friend of the family.
So there's like the Jewish mafia, is that basically what there is? And there's the Italian-American mafia.
I got nothing.
And he wants to be in business with him.
And I'm wondering if the books would explain that part more, because I would really like to understand the structure.
I think they might.
Yeah.
There's 2 stories that happen in Godfather 2, and they intertwine whenever they feel like it. It's a little weird. You have Vito's story, so we'll talk about him next, I think. I think we should just get through Michael's.
Let's get through Michael first.
Fredo has been kind of heading the casino thing, and then Michael comes to kind of nose in on it and to be like, well, you did good, but I'm kind of taking over now that we live here, blah, 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 blah. But Fredo has a good thing going with another family or the casino industry or whatever. I don't know. So he feels that Michael doesn't know what he's talking about. Fredo feels threatened with his role. So he actually helps, in a way, Hyman Roth, who's supposed to be Michael's partner, try to kill Michael. And that's where the hit comes from.
Yes.
And it's kind of secret, but there's a betrayal, and that's Fredo.
It comes out later that Fredo just wanted to be important and wanted to help. Roth's number 2 has been getting information from him. Fredo fully turned, and he's never fully honest about how much he turned. But yeah, he was working with them because he was always bitter at Michael.
So he knows that Hyman Roth wants him dead, but at the same time, it's also his partner. So that's where he's like in this weird thing. And then they try to do this thing in Cuba. But basically, the Cuban Revolution's happening at the same time, so it all falls apart. And obviously, Americans aren't welcome anymore in Cuba, so they all have to flee. So that didn't work out.
And Michael, after the assassination, completely severs ties with his family because he doesn't want them hurt, which is what leads to the end of his marriage later on, because he basically keeps them prisoner at their house. And then Michael's gone working on the deal. He meets with Roth, and Roth just living in that little Florida house is always a scene I love. Yeah, they go to Cuba. Like, Michael's story is almost act 1 and act 2. They do the Roth stuff, and then they kind of forget about it because there's nothing he can do. And then they do the Frank betrayal story. Because Roth is as smart as Michael. And they're just playing this chess match. Roth makes Frank think that Michael betrayed him.
And Frank, as we discussed, was left to handle the New York
Yes.
section of the Corleone family. But he thinks Michael wants him dead. So now he's working with the FBI to turn over evidence and to go on record saying Michael's this undisputed godfather to help the FBI put him behind bars. But so Michael's got to handle that shit because he's just like, you don't do that. We're family. So he goes and gets his brother from Sicily. And the first time I saw the movie, I always felt he was like, when he saw his brother in court, it made him think like, what am I doing? I can't betray. My brother would be so disappointed in me. But now I watched it this time and I was like, oh, they're like, we're going to fucking kill your brother if you say anything. And that's why he was like, oh, I can't say anything. I don't know which way it is. The first time I took it like he felt pride in the family and he didn't turn. But now I took it like he felt threatened and that's why he didn't turn.
No, like, so I always took it as it was an honor thing because that's all these guys care about is honor. These old guys and Michael.
Yes.
Nobody else, but that's what it was supposed to be. And that's what Michael was shoving in his face. But also, yes, it's a funny little... It could be a little of both.
Maybe it's both. But I like that you felt the same way I felt originally. So I think it is kind of an honor thing. I think that makes Frank a better character, is that he saw his brother and it reminded him of family comes first.
Family comes first.
And that's why he doesn't turn evidence and, just makes a mockery of the whole thing. And so Michael gets off scot-free. Yeah.
That, you really summed up the entire second half of this movie pretty perfectly. And the first part of the movie really ends with Michael coming back. Because after Cuba is when we see Michael again and he reunites with the family, I think.
And Kay is on the outs because she always knew he was crooked because he took over the family. But he always promised her he'd go legit in 5 years. But that ain't going to fucking happen. So she has too many demands. And she doesn't seem to know who she's dealing with because... she loses everything. She loses the kids. She loses her life. And he banishes her, basically. He lets her come over and see the kids as long as he's not there.
A scene that popped out to me this time was Michael coming home for the first time. I loved it because I'd never noticed it before. But, like, the expensive toy that he got him for Christmas is sitting outside, left out there to get messed up. Then he comes in and... the house is just kind of a mess.
It's like an analogy for...
yeah, everything is falling apart.
He's got to take control. And similar to the first movie, he's got a couple things he's got to take care of. So he doesn't want Fredo killed for his betrayal while his mother's still alive. But then his mom dies, so he's just like, fucking kill Fredo. So he kills his own brother. He has his own brother killed.
Yes.
We didn't talk about this character, Connie. Talia Shire's character, his sister. Obviously, she's a girl. She's never going to be part of the business. That's how they were back then. But she marries Carlo at the beginning of the first movie. That's where the wedding is all about. He ends up being an abusive husband.
Yeah.
But he's the one that actually betrays Sonny and has Sonny killed. I don't know if we ever mentioned that. So Michael has him killed as well, along with everybody else he has killed. So Connie has always been on the outs. She doesn't want to... she's like Michael, but like a more fucked up, druggy prostitute kind of Michael. Like, who knows what she's fucking doing. But she's the one that comes around to realizing that Michael is the Godfather. And I've fucked up my whole life, but the one thing I can do is I can take care of Michael. So Michael is left at the end of the movie with his kids and Connie, his sister. So he does have a little bit of a family thing at the end, even though his wife is no longer in the picture.
Michael kills everybody in the first one because they have to be killed. In this one, he does a similar style hit where he kills a bunch of people to show power, or to consolidate his power. But was it necessary to kill Hyman Roth? Because it was always the talk about how it was just business, and you do these things when it's a good business decision. And it feels like he just... well, I mean, I guess he did try to kill him. He had to kill him. Coming back and trying to kill Roth now, who is about to die, was just revenge. It was Michael being bad.
Petty.
Yeah. The thing that stuck out to me this time, too, was Fredo still had information after Cuba. Like, he stayed in contact with the people. Because Michael met with him at some point after the betrayal. And he asked Fredo for something, and Fredo knew the answer. Yeah, it was during the trials. He named which senators were in Roth's pockets. Which revealed that he was way deeper into their mess.
Yeah, Roth, there was too much shit from Roth that Michael couldn't just let it go. And then they do the one thing at the very end of the movie that I think really secured in a lot of people's minds why it was such a great film, is that they have this scene where they go back to 1941.
Yes. Yes.
The day of Pearl Harbor, because it's Vito's birthday, which is also my mom's birthday, by the way, December 7th. And Brando didn't want to.
Yeah, I guess he just didn't show up.
He didn't show up to shoot it, so they just left him out. But they put Michael and Sonny and Fredo and Connie, and then you also meet Carlo, Connie's future husband. And it's just a nice scene of the kids together, and then they all leave one by one, and Michael's just left by himself eating his cake at the dinner table. And it was just kind of a nice summation of like, they're all gone now, and it's just you.
It was really good.
It's cool. So anyway,
yeah.
I feel like we're wrapping up, but at the same time, we have one more part of part 2 to talk about, which is Robert De Niro's story.
Which part do you like the most?
I like De Niro's story the most because I am more of a fan of part 1 than I am of 2. I like 2. It's a great American film, but having both those stories connected kills the momentum of each a little bit. Like right when you're into it, they cut away from it. So you're like, it doesn't help the film. And also Michael's story in part 1 is way more interesting to me than him just in power and maintaining power throughout 2. Like that's all fun, but it's not as dramatic to me as him becoming a citizen to Godfather as the first one. So that's why I like the first one.
I understand what you're saying, but I think they used De Niro's story as a tool to advance time in Michael's story. I think so. It would probably be really jarring if they didn't have it edited that way.
That's true. But I liked De Niro's story because it felt more like the first movie to me. Like it was linear. It just worked well. So Vito's father insulted the Godfather of Sicily and was killed for it. They're having a funeral.
Yes.
And this Godfather's fucking ruthless. So he's like, oh, you insulted me? I'm going to kill your whole fucking family as well. So then he kills his brother, the guy's son. So then the mom takes Vito, who's only like 9, to the Godfather and says, look, I got one kid left. Can we just stop this? You killed my husband, you killed my son. Let's just stop it. But the guy's like, hey, I don't want to kill a kid, but he's going to get older and he's going to kill me someday. So what do you want me to do? I got to kill him. So she tries to kill the Godfather in that moment of, anger, and then she gets killed. Vito luckily escapes and he makes it to America, where his name is actually like Vito Antolini, but the dude at the immigration counter in New York is just like, where are you from? Corleone? Okay, Vito
Fucking
Corleone, whatever. Like, he doesn't even care. So now his name is Vito Corleone.
Just, it has to be brought up. Fuck that scene in Han Solo. Or in Solo.
What's the scene in Han Solo? I don't remember. Is that what happens to him?
He walks up to the table and the guy's like, what's your name? Oh, Han. All right, you're all by yourself, so you're Solo. Han Solo. And then he looks at the camera and he winks. Have you not seen Solo?
Wow. I have, but I don't remember hardly anything about it.
I hate that movie. But yeah, that's what they did.
Does he really wink at the camera?
No. But that's literally how they named him Han Solo.
Whenever somebody goes to a counter and the person behind the counter, who is just some featured extra, gives exposition for the movie, it's bad. Now, this worked, and maybe this is the only time it ever works because he's a kid, and it was the
first time, yeah.
Exactly. But this also reminds me of the end of The Dark Knight Rises, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt goes up to this counter at the end, and he gives his name, and she's like, what's your middle name? Robin. Oh, you should go by Robin. Robin's a nice name. Why don't you go by that? Something like that.
And that reveal...
Why don't they learn from their mistakes?
The name reveal, I need to know where that first appeared, because we've seen that so many times.
We could dedicate a whole show to the name reveal in movies, probably. We should do that.
We should. Someday. So instead of a ramblings episode, we would just call it like a rankings episode.
Yeah, there you go. So Vito's in New York.
And he's nobody. He's just working in a shop.
He's a little older now.
He has a wife. Sonny's already been born. His next door neighbor, Clemenza, asked him to hide some guns. And so he's like, oh, okay, whatever. And he hides the guns. Doesn't tell his wife.
It's like we're all in the same neighborhood. You're Italian, I'm Italian. Like, we help each other out.
Like, the biggest thing with Vito's story is that they show his rise to power because of who he is. he is successful because he treats everyone with respect.
Yeah.
And he's courteous to everybody.
He's gracious.
Yeah.
That's what I think one of his strongest thing is. Like, he has this job as a stock boy, and this is where he first gets the glimpse of the resident mafia head, Godfather's Finucci guy, who wears this big white suit and a hat. He comes in and tells the shop owner, I got this idiot son or a nephew. He needs a job. And the shop owner's like, well, what am I going to do? He tells me what to do. We all give him money or else we get fucked up. So he goes to Vito and says, I got to fire you because I got to hire the other guy. But even before he gets that out, Vito understands. You got to let me go because you got to, hey, I understand. I love it. And then he even tries to give him food to take to his family, who he desperately needs. But Vito's too proud for that. And he's like, no. You keep that. You can't give that away. So he's gracious. This is why people like him.
Yeah.
But he just has got it in for this Fiducia guy because he doesn't understand why people have to talk to him this way and why people are so scared of this guy. Like, he's like, fuck this guy. He's nothing. He's just an intimidator. He's not gracious at all. He's not a nice guy.
Exactly. Like, this guy is running through fear, and that's not how you run things.
A little bit. A little bit of fear. But not this much fear. You got to disguise the fear with courtesy and respect.
Yeah. Like, he's just very straightforward. Do this thing, or you'll die. Well, that's what's going to happen. Okay, yeah, no, through fear. Yeah.
So he gets Tessio. He's got another guy named Tessio and then Clemenza. But he's got this plan to hatch to basically take out Finucci, and he does. Which is a fun, cool Coppola-directed scene where he walks across rooftops and tries to get to the place that Finucci's going before he gets there, and he guns him down. And then little by little, he takes over.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. He takes over. It's a really full story because he takes his family on a trip to Italy to visit the homeland, and then he gets his revenge.
That's right, yeah. He goes to kill the guy that killed his father and brother and mother.
And which was just revenge. Yeah, that had nothing to do with... It could have been business, because he was facilitating the import of the olive oil.
Oh, the olive oil. That sweet, sweet olive oil, yeah. Which is probably what, in the first movie, their business was built on.
Yeah.
Was that olive oil, maybe. Because he wasn't big into the narcotics or anything like that,
Yeah,
so it had to be something.
It was protection.
Political power, of course. He had all those political connections.
Power.
But it was probably olive oil. I guess I never really thought of what their business was. They just happened to be powerful.
That was the front that they, I'm assuming, did the money laundering through.
That's pretty much too.
Yeah.
And it is a great film. Performances, Pacino. I mean, like I already, it's been said on my part, but I just feel like everybody plays it so perfectly. And you would never think that De Niro would be a good, on paper, you don't know if De Niro would be a good young Brando, but it works. He's a good young Corleone, whether he looks like
he
Brando
is the
or not.
character.
It works.
Yeah. Pacino in the 70s, I love him so much. And then Pacino in the 90s, I love. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the only Pacino I like.
Yeah, I can't think of too much in the 80s, I guess. But yeah, like Dog Day Afternoon is amazing, which also he is brothers with Fredo in The Godfather, and then he's a lover with that character in Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, it's such a different movie. Yeah, everything that's been said about John, is it just Cazale?
But Serpico is one of my favorite films as well, with Pacino playing Frank Serpico, the New York, the one good cop in Crooked NYPD.
I don't think I've ever seen Serpico.
It's really, really good. That's also Sidney Lumet, who did Dog Day Afternoon.
Robert Duvall in the 70s as well. Such a different guy, because I grew up with old Robert Duvall.
Totally. Most of these people have been old. I mean, even Pacino, like when I first thought about him, it was like, hooah!
Yeah.
That was the Pacino. And of course, Dick Tracy, like he was the bad guy in that. That's where I knew him from.
Pacino was?
Yeah.
I've only seen that movie once.
Oh, it's so good. So amazing.
Do you know that Warren Beatty basically still controls those rights and he won't do anything with it?
He still owns them. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But every 5 years or so, he puts out something Dick Tracy related that allows him to hold on to the rights. He always intended to make a sequel, and it did pretty good, I believe, the movie, but a sequel just never materialized.
I need to watch that again.
I mean, it may not be great, but the production design is amazing. I love the way he did everything, the makeup. It's just super fun and cartoony, and it really works.
Same with
for me, at least. And I love Madonna in it.
See, I don't even know if I know who's in it. I put that in the same category as Rocket Man. Is it Rocketeer?
Rocketeer, yes. We loved Indiana Jones. And anything 1930s, really, I grabbed hold of. I loved it, and I didn't understand why the rest of the world didn't.
Yeah.
Like, Rocketeer didn't do what they thought it would do. The Shadow is one of my favorite films. That didn't do what people thought it would do. Even The Phantom I love, but nobody cared. Anyway, James Caan's good.
James Caan is just amazing. Keaton, I think, is good.
Talia Shire's good. She's not bad, but she's just such on the outs for me that she just doesn't really feel a part of the film. I don't know. I just don't feel her acting chops are really up to par with everyone else at that time in her life. I feel like she really came into her own around Andy Hall, which was like 5 years later. She's better in the second movie. I'll give you that. But yeah, if you had to pick one thing about it that I don't think worked for me, it would be Diane Keaton.
I don't know if I would say Diane Keaton or her character.
Yeah, like maybe that's unfair.
Her character is just so unlikable in this movie just because she's unhappy and she doesn't want to be the boring wife because that's just not a thing anymore.
I don't know. Vito's wife works so well because she's given very little to do and doesn't really speak up.
So she works really well because she's not a character.
Yes. But I think Connie is a good character. So if you had to have one powerful female character in it that everybody's interested in, I think she handles that role. So maybe Kay wasn't as important, in my opinion.
No, I don't think Kay was important. They could have. But yeah, Connie's so interesting. Just her and Fredo are the rich kids. Like they are like deep end fuck up rich kids from the start. You want to go run the casino, buddy? You going to make people put money in those machines?
It's like you're in charge of the slot machines. Make sure those handles are always greased.
Yeah.
Coppola. Let's just talk about Coppola.
Great filmmaker. He does some movies. I'm not going to talk about anything before Godfather. I've never heard of any of them.
Well, I know The Rain People was his experiment with shooting a film guerrilla style while traveling with his cast and crew across America. And he spent a boatload of money for not a lot of good quality content, tried to make it something. He was just really on the outs. But he's one of those new age filmmakers, like New Hollywood. But he actually kind of started, unlike the other guys, he started like 10 years before everybody else, like Lucas and Spielberg and Bogdanovich and stuff like that. But he also was, because he was already a guy that was in the Hollywood system, and because he obviously had success with the Godfather films, he was able to help out all those guys. So he was instrumental in getting their careers going.
Yeah, because Coppola is the guy that famously pointed out to George Lucas that he is a robot and he needs to do movies that people like.
There you go.
But yeah, there's Dementia 13, You're a Big Boy Now, Finian's Rainbow, The Rain People.
I think Finian's Rainbow was like a success, and it was also like a classic Hollywood kind of film, so that made him that kind of director. So he tried to do something New Hollywood with Rain People. It was a huge failure. This Godfather script came around, and Robert Evans and Paramount were very particular about like, look, we need an Italian American who can actually direct this fucking thing so it's authentic. And I guess they gave it to a whole bunch of other people. Even Sergio Leone
Really?
Was offered to direct The Godfather, but he didn't want to do it. And Coppola finally agreed because he needed the money. But he even rewrote it, did his own version of it, and then I think they kind of put his and Puzo's together.
I thought him and Puzo wrote it together. There's actually, have you been watching that TV show at all on Paramount Plus?
I haven't, but I'd like to. I didn't know if it was any good or not.
I don't know if it's any good either.
Yeah.
It sounds cute.
But it's got some talent in it, So
yeah.
It's not just nobodies. So it could be good. Yeah, from what I read, it was Puzo made his own version of the script, and then Coppola wrote his own version of the script. And then Coppola kind of put the two of them together to kind of satisfy a little bit of what Paramount liked with Puzo's and also what he felt would work. So that's why they're both credited. But I could be wrong, but I don't think they wrote it together in that fashion.
Yeah, I didn't do much reading on this, if we're being honest.
That's what I read.
Yeah. So Coppola has this run in the 70s. The Godfather, The Conversation, which I think wins Best Picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's a great movie, too.
I own it. Have not watched it yet. I love Gene Hackman.
You gotta check it out. It's really good.
All right, so he does that, and then he makes Godfather Part 2. God, the next movie is so famous for all the wrong reasons. Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. But, just an amazing 70s run. Like, he could do no wrong.
And then the 80s. So 70s phase, he could do no wrong.
One from the Heart is where it all came crashing down.
I don't even know what that one is.
He wanted to do a musical love story. So we got Tom Waits, who's one of my favorite musicians, to write all the music for it. So that's good. So Tom Waits' contribution to One from the Heart is pretty good. Okay. They all try to do musicals, remember? Like Scorsese did New York, New York. And Spielberg did 1941, like his crazy farce. And they all were failures because these new Hollywood guys were like seemingly out of ideas by the time the 80s hit. Nobody had any faith in Coppola anymore after a bomb that was one from the heart. So he almost took it back, I think, himself and said, like, I just want to work on small movies. So then he got with that writer who wrote The Outsiders and Rumblefish, and he started making those movies and just kind of built his career back up slowly.
Did we watch The Outsiders in school?
We may have.
Because I think that's the only time I saw it was in like an English class.
And because that writer was somebody that schools would often read as well. I can't remember her name.
And then Rumblefish.
Rumblefish I like a lot. It's a really good movie. And then he started working with his nephew, Nicolas Cage. So they did Peggy Sue Got Married.
The Cotton Club is in between those two.
Oh, see, yeah, that was the other thing. The Cotton Club was a huge failure as well. It was another gangster film with Sylvester Stallone.
Musical crime drama?
So he had One from the Heart and Cotton Club back to back, I think, around that time, and they were both failures. So he was really on the outs with Hollywood at that time.
Peggy Sue Got Married.
And then what after that? Like
Gardens of Stone.
Let's do a Godfather 3, even though I don't really want to do it, but I got to do something that gets me back on top.
After Tucker.
Yeah, Tucker, and that's supposed to be really good with Jeff Daniels, and I've never seen that.
I haven't seen it either. Like
not Jeff Daniels, Jeff
Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, thank you.
But then we get to his 90s, and we get a bit of a rebound. The Godfather Part 3.
Yeah, well, I think Godfather 3 made him popular again, but it didn't do for him critically what he wanted it to do. So, and then Winona Ryder famously had to pull out of that movie at the last minute, and that's why he put his daughter Sophia in the role, which was another bad idea.
Yes.
That she brought the script to Dracula to him. You should make this movie as an apology for me, or I'm saying I'm sorry for having to, but I want to make this movie with you. So that's why you did Dracula after that. I don't know if it was a success or not, but it was at least something that kept him popular again.
Because the 90s all had to have a modern horror. I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast before, but we had Dracula, and then we had The Wolf.
Yeah, Wolf with Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer, right?
Who directs Wolf, though? Because I feel like it was...
Mike Nichols.
A good guy, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they have The Frankenstein.
With De Niro, right? And Kenneth Branagh.
Yes! There was a weird run of auteurs doing...
It's all about guys that were born in the 40s. They grew up watching the horror movies.
And then there's Jack.
There's Jack. I got to give Jack another watch because I just remember being so embarrassed that I think I might have a better appreciation of it,
Maybe.
But maybe it works.
And then
check it out.
His final film of the 90s. His final film of the 90s was 90s. Rainmaker, which I never saw. It's the only one from the 90s that I didn't see. I heard it was good.
He's making efforts to stay current, and I think that's what is also good about that movie.
Well, and I mean, he was also trying to chase what was popular, and John Grisham was all the rage.
Yeah, it was right after A Time to Kill and The Firm a couple years before that. Yeah.
For a while, I was sure that it was direct-to-video. $40 million budget, $45 million in the box office. Not great. And then 2000s, he makes two movies. Youth Without Youth, and then Tetro. And then his last movie was Twixt.
Which I actually saw.
I have not seen it.
With Val Kilmer as a writer. And it's a weird movie, but it reminded me of Coppola in the early 80s with The Outsiders and Rumblefish. He definitely made a movie in the style of those movies that he made back then. I think he might even self-funded these last three films as well.
Yeah, I could see that.
After The Rainmaker, I think he was just like, I don't need to keep chasing trends. I don't need to keep trying to stay in business. I got my wine company, which is killing it. Everybody loves me for what I did. And all he really started to do was just work on making his old movies look good. Like he went after The Godfathers again and remastered them. He went after Apocalypse Now like 3 or 4 times, right? Like just to try to do different versions of it. That's just where he was like in the George Lucas phase of his career. But unlike Lucas, he was like, I still want to do some kind of new things too. So he was doing his little movies, and that's fine. And now apparently he's making the movie he's wanted to make for 30 years, self-funding it.
Megalopolis.
It could put him back on the map, or it could just be another one of those movies that he self-funds and they come and go.
Next episode, we're going to have a short episode on Godfather Part 3, which is no longer Godfather Part 3.
Yeah.
It is now Godfather... Oh, I always forget the word.
Coda.
The death of Michael Corleone.
I did read that when The Godfather and Godfather 2 were on television, like in the 80s, he cut a version that was completely sequential.
Yeah.
And I guess people enjoyed that as a television viewing experience.
Now, what else has Mario Puzo done, or is this it? Mario Puzo...
He did something else that was a little out there.
He did the screenplay for Godfather, Earthquake, Godfather 2, Superman?
Yes, there you go. Superman. He wrote Superman. That was the thing that stood out. Yeah.
And Superman 2, the two good ones. The Cotton Club, Story Only, Godfather Part 3, Christopher Columbus, The Discovery, and that's
I remember seeing that being like, oh my God, Puzo. Yeah, he wrote The Godfather and Superman. Another Brando movie.
Anyway, yeah, that was this episode. That's it. That's all I have. I'm not even gonna...
Is there anything else? You got
No introduction, no exit, just a hard cut to black as you kiss my ring.